All right, so we have our third presentation this morning, and we are going to talk about blue light security. And so again, each of these topics come up as a process in the various issue days. And so I'm really excited to hear what this one is all about, because I've heard pieces of it, but I don't know the whole thing. So I'll let the team introduce who they are, and we'll hear about blue light security.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm actually going to introduce our project a little bit before we get into ourselves, but we're Project Blue Light, bringing blue light safety beacons to Bismarck-Mandan, starting with Bismarck State College's campus. Just a little bit of what's to come. We're going to go through our vision, our team, the research and development that we went through, our partners, the financials, the future, and then a Q&A session. To start off here, we're going to go with, as Simon Sinek suggests, our why. So as members and participants of the Leadership Bismarck-Mandan program throughout the last 9 months, we've all actively participated in and supported our community progress. This is the mission for that program, and we're really proud to be a part of it. The 5 of us came together on our how through public safety and security. We want to make sure that as the community grows and shifts, we're providing that same sense of safety and security that people have felt throughout Bismarck-Mandan in its entirety. Last up, we got to our what. After a lot of research, we decided that blue light installation on BSC's campus would be the best way to take care of these safety and security concerns and progress throughout. BSC has a vision to be a leader in the polytechnic education, improving lives and building sustainable communities, and we really meshed with that message to move forward with this project. So as way of introduction to ourselves, after introducing the project, I'm Courtney Hamilton. I'm an escrow closing officer with the title team here in Bismarck. Personally, I was really interested in this project as I attended University of Miami. Blue lights were on campus, and it definitely added to the sense of safety and security being there. In my junior year, I was actually had a friend who had a situation where she used the blue light. Due to the rapid response from it, the situation was de-escalated, and we were able to avoid a possibly unsafe and dangerous situation. And I will put it over to Devin.
I'm Devin Melby. I'm a financial advisor at Legacy Financial Partners. My why for this project was 2 reasons. First reason is I was born and raised here. So I have a lot of great memories from Bismarck, out running on trails, going to the community bowl, you name it. So I'd love to see this as we grow, continue to be safe for everyone. My second reason is I'm type 1 diabetic. So all day, every day, I could have a medical emergency at any point. Having safety features in place, whether you're out on a trail, walking around, if you're a student at BSC, I think is very important.
I'm Katie Junkie. I'm the Nutrition Services Coordinator at Bismarck Valley Public Health. My why and interest in this project is a female runner in this community who actually frequents the BSC loops and trails quite often in the early morning hours. I find value in that level of safety that I think can protect our community and serve as a deterrent for possible situations to avoid.
I'm Tiffany Hodge. I own Quills Corporate Consulting, and I consult with tribal nations and do some construction projects, business projects, small businesses throughout the North Dakota and nationwide. And my why is because I have a 9-year-old daughter who also likes to swim. And, you know, growing up here, you're out and about, especially in the summertime. Obviously, after our long winter, you just have that urge. Well, with my daughter swimming, and when she gets older, she's going to need some support. You know, going to the BSC Aquatic Center, there's a big parking lot next to the bowl. And, you know, you don't always have those options. And it makes me feel a little bit safer for my daughter and myself that we would have something like this in our community.
And I'm Sherry Anderson with Starry & Bank. I work in HR. My why is I do college-age daughters, and things like this are just a nice safety feature. Kind of gives moms at ease to. But you know, when I had to send my teenage daughter to a college campus, it's just nice to know those are available. So a few years back, we toured Minot State. My daughter wanted to go to Minot State, and this is actually a picture of their blue lights that they have there. And when we were touring, I asked about them. I'm like, what are these blue lights I see everywhere? And they said, well, they're essentially a security feature. You hit the button, and it would record 360 view of what's happening in the area at that time. and it'll call 911. There's also another button on here that will ask for an escort, the campus police, which is available 24/7 on the Minot State campus. They can come and they can escort you to, if you don't feel safe or anything like that. So it's kind of a nice feature that they have on Minot State. One thing I did when we first started this project is I called the chief of police at Minot State and I asked them about what they did on their campus. And in 2014, they installed 26 cameras on their campus. There's a GPS, so if you push the button, 911 knows exactly where you're going. In today's world, your cell phone might not give exact GPS locations. They know the exact GPS locations when they hit these buttons. And some other things that they have is it's a siren on there that can give you, like, if there's an emergency message, a tornado or anything like that, it's inside the building that they could talk, say there's a tornado warning, there's nothing outside. So if you're outside on campus, you can't hear that there's a tornado warning. So these have sirens on them that can tell you a little bit more about, some of the emergency messages and those kinds of things. When I talked to the chief of police, he thought that it was more of a deterrent. They say they don't get pushed a lot, but it's a deterrent just to have them on campus.
Looking to Bismarck Mandan, just curious, who's all been to BSC campus before?
Every single
Every single person.
200 person who's in here right now, right? Oh, yeah, sure.
Already pressing buttons.
There we go.
So everyone's been there. Brenda, what brought you there? The BSC campus. A lot of things.
Different events, visiting people.
Yep. So when we started to look at BSC and trying to decide if this was a possibility at BSC, we asked ourselves two questions. Number one is, who are the campus users? Are they just college kids? Is there a lot of other stuff going on there? And number two is, what current safety features do they have at BSC to determine if there's a need for more safety features? And if that need is possibly a blue light or something else. So BSC campus right now has 700 full-time or 700 employees, 370 are full-time faculty. They have 4,700 BSC students. They have 2,000 high school students that come to campus for the Career Academy. And they also, the typical student is not someone you'd see at UND or NDSU. It's an older person. It's someone that could have a full-time job. It's someone that has a family. Because of that, BSC needs to be a lot more flexible with scheduling the classes. So they're utilizing a lot more night classes and evening classes, which could use additional safety features. But to Brenda's point there is it's not just college kids. It's not just the educational standpoint. It's the recreational as well. We might go there to run on the hills. We might bike on the hills. We might go to the community bowl to see football games, track meets. We might bring our kids now to Gateway of Science. If you've been there on Saturday, Sunday, it's nuts. I mean, there's cars all over that place, kids running around. We might even go for business events at the Energy Center. So there's a million different reasons we could go there, not just for the educational standpoint, but recreational as well. Second question we ask ourselves is, what are they doing currently to offer security for all these purposes? The first two things that came up were lighting and cameras. You have a well-lit area and a camera there, it's going to deter a lot of crime and people just doing dumb stuff. So this has always been a priority for BSC. They have great lit areas and they have 350 cameras currently all over their campus. They also have their own police department. So they have BSC, the police department, that is on campus from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. So 16 hours a day. And then a 6-hour period throughout the day at nighttime where they don't have anyone there that if a call came in, they would dispatch Bismarck Police Department. One more note here too. I have some fun stats for you guys. BSC was nice enough to give us a list of calls that came in last year. So the calendar year of 2022, January 1st to December 31st. Just a quick note, these are not actual crime, it's just offenses reported. So someone calling in doesn't mean actual crime happened. So last year at BSC, 6 calls came in for assault. 2 calls came in for terrorizing. 3 calls came in for stalking. 1 call was a bomb threat. and 140 called for medical emergencies. So not just crime, not just anything like that, but medical emergencies could be a big standpoint of this too. We pulled this from Strava. If you guys are familiar with Strava, what they do is they just have a GPS that tracks recreational activities. So if you look at the map here, the thing that stands out the most to me is the bowl and then the hills. So people that are biking and running, to us, this just reinforced how active our Bismarck community is when it's actually nice outside. Luckily for us, we brought this idea to BSC, and this has actually been a priority of theirs for years. We actually came to them and they said they had hired an engineering firm years ago to actually decide, does this make sense? And where should we strategically locate these across BSC campus? They decided on 10 locations, so 10 blue light poles that we would put in. If you look at them, these are where they're at. So if you guys are all familiar with BSC campus, we have essentially 2 by the bowl here. Gateway Science would be right here. We have about 4 or 5 around the main campus area where kids will be walking to cars, walking to classes, dorm rooms, you name it.
Rolfing.
Rolfing. There you go. And then we have by the key areas over here too. So 10 blue lights all over BSC campus.
So the elephant in the room, cell phones, right? We all have them. So I think the question gets asked, why do we need a blue light if we have a cell phone that I can simply call 911? Well, personally, when I'm outdoor recreation, I don't carry my cell phone. It bugs me, it's a hindrance, so I run without. So for me, that's an option. 2, if it's in your backpack, in your pocket, maybe you can't get to it. If you really are in a situation, that might not be your first go-to. 3, this is not meant to replace cell phones, it's meant to work in conjunction with them. There's a lot of technological advances now since even they've replaced on Minot's campus, UND has them as well, where the cell phone can speak to the blue light and vice versa. There's apps that work where you could then signal the blue light to like turn on with a light or an alarm. They have those integrations that can function beyond the cell phone. So it's like 2 components of safety. And then it's a deterrent. That is what this is. It's a next level of safety beyond just having your cell phone. It provides that sense of, just a sense of community. Grand Forks, there were several articles that covered theirs and they said they don't really get pushed, but it provides a level of safety and our users feel that sense. Obviously, there are some cons. Mobility, once they're installed, maintenance, and we'll get into that in a little bit about what that maintenance looks like. But because we are in 2023, technology has advanced for the better and maintenance is relatively low in terms of upkeep on the technology side. And then of course, false alarms. How many kids are going to go push the button and just call 911? Well, how many kids can just pick up their phone and dial 911? It's kind of the same thing. Minot has one on near daycare, and daycare kids are all around it and they've not had any issues with false alarms or kids pushing it. And you might get those few too that are in the beginning, kids screwing around at 2 a.m. that want to hit it, fine. But in speaking with CENTCOM, actually, they said that was not a concern as false alarms. So again, just to reinforce, we are looking to add a tool that works in concert with current resources, with their camera features, with their current BSC police to amplify the safety, protect the community and campus space. So it really is just another level of safety that we're looking to offer, not replace anything.
This is our key partner, BSC. They've been incredible. Our first person we reached out to was on the top there, Matt Giddings. I think our first meeting with him, we had a half hour of his kid running around in their office, and then he actually turned the lights on. We spent the next half hour in the dark. So all the data we've got from Matt, he's been a big proponent of having these things on campus. He's talked to parents who want these up at BSC as well. They've been a big help to us in providing all this data and been getting us partnered up with some other resources at BSC with the BSC Foundation. So.
And we would love to have Matt here today. He would love to be here, but it does happen to be graduation week, so they're a bit busy over there. So thank you, Matt, if you're watching.
We've reached out to a lot of the community partners. So Gateway to Science, we've talked about how busy everything is. Gateway to Science told us that in the first 5 weeks that they were open, they had 17,000 people go through their doors. And so they're busy. Same thing with MDU Community Bowl. They're only open for 6 months out of the year. They have over 300 events in those 6 months. And so those are very busy places. And in talking to Gateway to Science, MDU Community Bowl, CENTCOM, and the Bismarck Police Department, they are all aware, they're all on board, and they're all supportive of this project. Obviously, when we talk about the 911, like hitting the button, it calls 911. CENTCOM said, well, that's the same thing. Somebody calls in. So everybody that would be a partner, they are aware and they are supportive of our project.
So we started looking at the blue lights, the options, and there was 1 or 2 vendors, and then we talked to Matt about it, and he had said that they also selected the K1. Now with the blue light, we were looking at different options with that. So we looked at with a camera, all the other added features. And with talking with Matt, the BSC has 350 cameras around campus. So we thought, we'll probably just leave that one off. Just for the simple fact too of if you use a camera, then you have the maintenance issue. You have the expense. And with North Dakota weather, we all know how great that is. So we figured, let's go with the option of not having cameras on it, but all the other safety features. So when it came down to it, it came into about $8,600 per pole with $350 per shipping. So $9,000 per pole with shipping included. For installation, basically, it's the equivalent of having a basketball hoop put in. Cement block, you bracket it down, all good. So that also added to the feature of being able to have BSC maintenance do it. And their grounds crew, because normally they could do the option of having it trenched, bringing in electrical, working with their electrical contractor, which adds to the expense. So we looked at just having the basic minute with the solar panel. So we wouldn't have to trench anything and bring in lines and all that fun stuff. So with all that, you're looking about $100, $200 a year for maintenance. And the K1 actually has alarm monitoring and other options, extensive equipment, basic options of diagnostic testing that you can add on to, and then it's hooked into a cellular service, which they all utilize anyway, right? So it was pretty simple for all around maintenance. So the next option is, okay, so we know the cost, right? We're looking at $90,000, say 100, just to be good. And so we started looking at grant opportunities, and we worked with the BSC Foundation and their grant person and wanted to take a look at different options. We looked at federal grants. They're very cumbersome. They are quarterly reporting. We didn't want to weight down the staff for, this grants, because eventually they're the fiscal agent. They'll be taking over the reporting. They'll be having to deal with all the other things from this grant. So we looked at that as probably not a feasible option for them. We looked at the Bismarck Community Foundation, Bismarck mini grant and super grants, North Dakota Petroleum Council, Lignite Coal. So those are probably better opportunities to support our community in putting in grants and not having the same cumbersome process, as it were. And we also looked at 2 others, but they're already utilizing those grants for different aspects of the BSC campus. So we also thought, okay, in addition to grants, why don't we look at sponsorship opportunities? We have companies in town that would probably be more than willing to sponsor a pole or half a pole, 5,000 each, and then could have a name plaque on it to show that there's support for the safety of our community. So we've kind of worked out 2 different fiscal mechanisms on that. Doing the grants, so we're going to be writing and putting those in, and then also going to businesses in the Bismarck Mandan community to help support this project.
And that brings us to where we are right now, just looking at our next steps. Tiffany and the rest of our team, we're working on securing those grants, working very closely with BSC Foundation, which I want to give a big shout out to Corey and Emily there. Thank you so much for all of your help throughout the process. Then installation, again, we're going to be able to use BSC, their campus themselves, don't have to outsource any of that. We'll keep it in there. We're trying to help them as much as we can without putting any undue burden on it further. So again, just sort of showing, looking forward, that commitment to community well-being, that show from our community institutions that they care about the safety of others, of who they're serving, what they're serving, about protecting And moving forward, as we have this amazing campus growth, this amazing community growth, and we pick BSC as that central location because again, we can tap into that. We can use this as a starting point, a lifting off point. If they're going really well, which obviously they will be, we're in charge of it, then we can look to adding them in other places. We've talked to the Parks Department. We've talked to a few others in the community about doing, as the riverfront gets developed, putting them on more of those trails. Like Katie said, being able to be more comfortable, phoneless, throughout, being able to run, bike, swim our community and being able to have that option there. Frolf, yes, Frolf, very important. Again, it tapped into those values that we talked about before and throughout Leadership Bismarck Mandan of public-private partnerships and continuing to show dedication to community throughout. Any questions, comments, concerns? Have you guys been interested in? Thank you.
One thing we didn't really get into too is apps on your phone. BSC has done safety apps in the past, and it never really worked. Maybe they didn't market it enough. One tough thing about BSC is they have the recreational standpoint. So even if you have an app for the students, well, how do I know about that if I'm running the trails? So you got two aspects of that. The app, Matt thinks is a great idea, but it can work in concert with the pull as well. They can work together.
We have physical marketing for our product and that you can see it on campus, so it will get used that way. Elliot?
Take a stab at the first question. So do you guys have an idea? I think Sherry, you mentioned you went up to Minot and you're like, what is this thing? Is part of the plan to do some community instruction so people understand what it is? Or do you think signage on it's enough to educate somebody walking by knowing what it is?
Well, like in mine, you can go on to whatever, KX12, and they did a news story on it when the students came back, interviewed students. We found the same thing when we looked at UND. UND did the story when they came out of UND, and so that's what we would look to, is maybe having an article in the newspaper and the TV, just to showcase what they are when they're installed, and have some of the students react to it.
And as mentioned before, the BSC campus brings in international people from other places. As someone who's not from here originally, I was pretty familiar with them before I got here. So if we have people coming from other communities, they are really ubiquitous throughout campuses throughout the nation. So hopefully we're relying on that. And Minot's has looks a little bit more intense than the K1 blue light station that we're looking at. So it'd be a pretty clear one button. That's what you got.
So question from online. What is the distance between each of the blue lights?
Good question. Pretty good distance, enough distance where you wouldn't be able to see the one in front of you. There might be a few around campus here where maybe you'd be able to see this, but you think about most of this, I mean, that's hundreds of yards. So they thought about putting more in, but because the cost came back, they limited down to 10. And Matt said, we decided on these 10 because you can't see one from another. Just based off cost wise, how can we be as efficient as possible?
And again, this was an engineering firm that did this. So they did a study of what parts of campus get used the most, where it would be most effective to have them. So we feel pretty confident in this choice.
I would say from personal use. I mean, it's like a half mile. You would be able to see this because it's flat. There's hill here, so you wouldn't. But for some of them, I think you'd be able to see it in the distance, but you might have to sprint.
We can also just show here too, again, this was the use on Strava, and it matches up pretty well with where those locations ended up.
I just want to say that I appreciate the medical reference at the beginning. Deb and I too have a son who's type 1 diabetic, and then also the stats that of the number of calls that came in that were medical. It really gives it another perspective of the use for these. And, even in those cell phone situations where you're saying, okay, you have a cell phone, why didn't you do something? But in a medical situation, that's not going to help. Or if adrenaline's really running, like even finding the keypad to dial 911 could be very difficult. So great idea, great project.
To that point, you can't run on the trails without thinking about that, without that being in the back of your head. So having just an additional layer, you're going to make all the difference in the world. Mark didn't even bring his cell phone today, so.
There we go. Thanks, Mark.
On purpose.
Yeah.
If you're walking in the wintertime or something, you have gloves on and then you have to take your gloves out or get it out of your pocket. There's just a lot of different things. And my daughter actually one day called me from Minot and she said, she talked to me really loudly, and my daughter has a boisterous personality anyway, but she was talking excessively loud. And I said, well, what's going on? And she said, somebody's following me and I'm gonna go as fast as I can to this blue light to hit it, but I want you on the phone with me so that they can hear me talking. She was with a friend and but she kind of felt the need to use it. If you've ever been to Minot's campus, it can be a little creepy. They do have a cemetery on campus. So it's a little creepy, but so, I mean, there are times where people, they feel the need to use it, or just even being by it, that person walked away. So she never actually hit the button, but her walking toward it, that person walked the other direction. So it's like more of a deterrent than anything else.
I was just at MSU for the Minot Symphony weekends ago. And parking around there, we came around the corner and it wasn't the blue light pole, but it was like attached to a building. So they really are kind of ubiquitous. Is BSC looking at, I mean, do they want the physical blue light pole as opposed to a building? And if so, why is that preference?
So again, I think we sort of showed it with the recreational uses and sort of between the building aspect. If you're by a building, there's usually a greater number of people there, resources there. Adding this onto the front course, getting between places, getting among places is really the greater need for it in this particular campus scenario. In downtown areas and places where there are more buildings put together, but sort of not as accessible, you can't really go in them, can't really sort of get to them. I know they have it with hospitals up in Minot as well. And again, our vision for the future is this expanding, is to show that, you know, this investment in community safety can be utilized in other places, and hopefully, you know, Gabby, Sanford will add some to theirs, and throughout the community in places where people feel the need.
I pull it back as a deterrent to Cameron. Just you put a big tall tower.
Yeah.
Just like you put a sign that says Cameron use.
Yeah.
You know, people see that, it's a big deterrent.
And I was just gonna add on, they do have a lot of, since they have 350 cameras inside buildings and around buildings, they felt that it was away from a building, it would be a better place. And another topic is, my daughter works at Trinity in Minot, and they just opened their new building a week ago, and they have these blue lights around their parking lot and inside the building. So they incorporated the blue lights on this new property that they built.
So there's no video, but does it start recording as soon as you hit that button? If there's
The ones in Minot too, these wouldn't, but like Matt said, if they push the button at 10, they
but
can go to the
audio,
camera.
Yes,
would
the
it-
audio.
yeah,
That
so
would
it's
be-
CENTCOM,
it's-
yes.
Yep, and
Yeah, the
so,
CENTCOM,
and
yes.
speaking with CENTCOM, one of the questions they brought up was privacy. So for those recordings, what do they do with them? So getting into the weeds of privacy from a call that is addressed. CENTCOM had no issues with them at all, and it felt it was very valuable. Obviously, Bismarck PD, excuse me, already has to respond to that campus on the off hours anyway. And so that's something that they had no issue with. It's not like it would be adding extra labor to an already busy police department.
Question from online. Do you know how long these poles typically last for needing replacement?
Minot has had theirs since 2014 and they've not replaced them. And they said, well, you know, we all know North Dakota winters.
Yeah.
They're starting to get to where they're looking at replacements. With the cameras that Minot has, they're about double the cost. And so that's one of the things that they're looking at. So, I mean, it is going on 10 years that they've had them with little to no maintenance issues or going down right like that.
And again, with the ones in Minot, there's a lot more parts to it, so the breakdown is gonna be a little faster than what we're looking at with the K1 blue light towers.
Okay, I can go. So Devin, you mentioned that there was like 150 some medical calls. Is there an opportunity in these tools to like store an AED or first aid kits or Narcan or anything like that?
So those need to be temperature controlled, so I wouldn't recommend storing those outside because of weather.
There can be signs on them that point you to the
Yeah,
nearest
they
building
could
that
maybe
has one.
they could indicate maybe where an AED is nearly located, or signage that way, like the nearest AED to this pole is the student union or whatever, but not in the physical unit itself.
You mentioned as far as funding, you're looking for sponsors where they can maybe even put their company logo on it, right? Are there other areas where they actually use this as a marketing tool for continuing the funding for it, where you can sponsor one for a year, pay a fee, similar to any sort of other
For like
signage?
maintenance costs and sort of like, yeah, that's a great idea. I can't speak for all of us, but I certainly hadn't thought of that yet. And I don't think we discussed it yet, but.
Yeah, and when we talked to Minot, they got theirs through a grant. And so Minot got theirs through a grant, and so did NDSU and UND. Those were all three of those campuses, and they all were put in 2014. And it was a grant through the state of North Dakota.
So would this sort of define the technology that would be implemented across the whole metro then? If we start with K1, they all have to be that K1 brand?
No.
Or in terms of integration, would they work with all?
No, I mean, the pole works through a Verizon network or AT&T, so it really doesn't matter. It was just that they had recommended it, and even going online and looking for the poles, this one stood out. The other two vendors, one was a software vendor and the other one didn't even respond. So
Have there been any other battery solar installs in North Dakota? Is there any concern about wear and tear on the batteries with winter? I hear it with some of the other solar technologies, but
They do a lot of stop signs that have solar powered, so I would think it'd be similar to that, that there's, you know, like when you drive to Minot, there's a lot of, pay attention to a lot of those stop signs that are solar powered.
there's a warranty,
Yeah.
a year and a half warranty.
I think it's a valid,
Yeah.
obviously concern and something as we physically look into making a purchase, things to consider with obviously our weather and our season.
Warranty include hail?
I'll have to dig into that.
Yeah.
Fun part. Another question. What is the long-term sustainability of this program and who will pay for future costs?
Well, yeah, long-term sustainability, like we talked about, I think that maintenance cost of 100 to 200 a year is actually probably over what it's gonna be. In talking with Minot, it was probably under 100 a year, and again, that included the camera and all of those extra features. In talking with the BSC Foundation and BSC, you know, we also had the idea, they're gonna be North Dakota's premier polytechnic institution. I would think that these might actually be good examples or you know, class uses if some of those issues come up. Again, it's sort of a 10-year investment in it. Looks to be about maybe even a little bit longer. Assessing that moving forward, I can't tell you where technology is going to be or what safety is going to look like at that point. So that's our plan on sustainability at the moment.
I think having this come up previously, BSC student government has brought it up as areas of concern in their projects. Obviously, it was the financial piece, and with student government at BSC is a 2-year, they turn over pretty quickly. So to see a project through is challenging. Speaking with Matt, I think he explained that students weren't maybe completely opposed in paying for it through their student fees, but a larger number to cover a project like this, they were. But a $5 fee that is rolled into your student fees to cover this, or just like any other fees that are taken care of. Matt didn't seem too concerned for a long-term maintenance beyond installation that it would raise issues from BSC. We didn't get into, I guess, who's paying for it exactly, but there wasn't a lot of concern on his end.
On a side note too, Katie and I have a little bit of grant experience. So that part wasn't really a big issue for us, that we could write the grants and turn it over. You know, so that part we were confident with that.
Did you guys approach University of Mary or United Tribes when you were looking for your partner organization? And if so, how were those conversations?
So I think actually before we approached anyone anywhere, we tried to find the space that was used most by the community, not just student-based. So when we were talking about BSC, we have that National Energy Center where there's rooms to be rented out by businesses. We have the trails there. We have students from all over Bismarck, Mandan. But also, you know, throughout our program, we got to see what the expansion for BSC looks like. We have the new Gateway to Science, but also with their Polytechnic institution, they're building more rooms for community space. They're building more places for gathering there. So we decided on BSC first, just to sort of have that community aspect within it. We're hopeful that when this, proves itself to be something really positive and impactful, that we can be an example and maybe have UTTC or UMary learn from where our maybe hiccups were or how best to move forward and getting some of their own.
Yeah, trails was one of the first things we identified. So just knowing GSE campus right around all those trails. Trails are just harder because you're probably gonna need a camera on them, which raises the cost, raises the maintenance going forward. Whereas BSC having 350 cameras all over, you can take the camera away. You can put a solar panel on top of it, so you don't have to wire anything in the ground. It just makes it a heck of a lot simpler.
Question for you regarding the funding. So, you've applied for the grants already?
No, we have
Okay.
not.
Okay.
We
In the
just got the
process.
final approval.
Yeah.
And what's the timeline on receiving word? So once you submit the grant, when would you anticipate a grant being awarded, assuming you did
Yeah,
such a great job at writing it?
yeah, initially, for these, the ones we had, I think it's July. You have other organizations, foundations that will run on that fiscal June, July cutoff or September, October.
Okay.
So, well, these are all Junes, I think, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
I-
Petroleum and lignite, I'm not sure. I think those are just opens.
Okay.
They're open, but the foundations and super grants, those are June.
I think deadline was June 1st, and then they pay out October, November, somewhere in there.
So you have that buffer. It's
So you-
normal, 6 months.
Realistically, if things go well,
This
you
fall.
could see some holes in the ground by fall. Okay,
If the ground doesn't freeze.
Yeah.
Never.
it's always bigger.
Any more questions?
Elliot?
He's just getting started early on the
I
clock.
know,
We
I'm
appreciate them. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you to leadership. Thank you to the
Yes.
BSC Foundation and Campus PD. We really appreciate it. Yeah.